am Jonathan Onquist, the pastor of First Lutheran Church in West Barnstable, one of the Council's many church bodies, and it is my pleasure to serve as your host for On Good Faith. We endeavor to bring to you awareness about activities and events and special programs that affect life here on Cape Cod and in many cases beyond. Today we're going to be talking about Amazing Grace, a program for Cape Cod children whose parent is or has been incarcerated. Amazing Grace has a brochure in which they say this: it is a cost-free summer experience for children whose parent is or has been incarcerated. It's a chance for children aged 7 to 11 to have fun and to experience unconditional love. Wow. Unconditional love. What a necessity for a full life. I was looking up articles about love, and I found something from Max Lucado, a book that I have on my desk, and it talked about love. I'd like to quote his words. Our love depends on the receiver of the love. Let 1,000 people pass before us, and we will not feel the same about each. Our love will be regulated by their appearance, by their personalities. Even when we find a few people we like, our feelings will fluctuate. How they treat us will affect how we love them. The receiver regulates our love. Not so with the love of God. We have no thermostatic impact on God's love for us. The love of God is born from within the Creator God, not from what God finds in us. God's love is uncaused and spontaneous. Does God love us because of our goodness? Because of our kindness? Because of our great faith? No. God loves us because of God's goodness, kindness, and great faith. Yes. Amazing words and amazing grace. And those words again, children experience unconditional love. Our guests today are the Reverend Carol Bolstead, who is the chair of Amazing Grace of Cape Cod, and Judson Phelps, who is a volunteer with Amazing Grace of Cape Cod. Both are licensed drug and alcohol counselors also. And I'd like you to tell me and tell us about Amazing Grace and the unconditional love we so often fall short of providing. Carol?
Yeah, the idea of offering a camp experience for children of parents who are or have been incarcerated really grew out of this experience of knowing that when children come from a family where there has been incarceration, the likelihood of them becoming incarcerated themselves is immense. And so, and children in households where there's an experience of incarceration, they can often have trauma experiences and oftentimes blame themselves. It's because of me that my father or my mother has become incarcerated. So providing a space where unconditional love happens is to let them know that there's nothing wrong with them, that they're loved just the way they are. And certainly it doesn't mean that, that there are no boundaries in terms of activities and things that kids do at the camp. But we demonstrate our love in a way that makes children feel like they are fully accepted for who they are.
I think what you talked to me before about that mission statement of Amazing Grace of Cape Cod, and it was this: the mission of Amazing Grace of Cape Cod is to operate programs for children who currently have or have had a family member incarcerated. These programs will demonstrate unconditional love with the intention of breaking the chain of intergenerational incarceration.
Right.
That's a very significant, challenging goal.
Sure.
Can you speak more about intergenerational incarceration? I mean, if the family member does it, it's kind of like
Yeah.
you're not too surprised if the 15-year-old gets
Right.
in trouble.
Yeah, I used to work at an agency that worked with prisoners and doing discharge planning as they were coming out into the community, and oftentimes I would see grandfathers, fathers, and sons in the very same prison. It's just you know, it's what they grow up knowing. It's kind of almost like it's almost an expectation that they're going to follow in their family members' footsteps, and a lot of times it's a result of alcohol and drug use that creates that situation where a child will end up incarcerated themselves.
But oftentimes I would imagine the desire of the child, if you would ask the child, where do you want to be in 15 years? They're not going to say, I'm going to follow dad or mom and be behind bars. They're going to say, I want to be, what? Judd, you've experienced.
They probably can't answer that question. Where do you dream being in 15 years? And they may not say that they're going to follow a parent, but that's probably in their head, because that's all they really know. Yeah. We'd go back to unconditional love for a second. Excuse me. See a little baby and mother just hugs it and nurtures it and whatever. In many instances, these kids have never even felt that.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. What Amazing Grace is designed to do is to teach them that they are lovable for who they are, nothing else.
What a message, though. I mean, a lot of people have not experienced that, and Amazing Grace is trying to teach kids that they are lovable. How do you do that? We trained our volunteers very, very carefully in how to interact with the children. And a lot of our volunteers were older last year, and they're kind of like in many instances, like a grandparent figure. And as a grandparent, you just love your grandchild, no matter what they do. And there's a special bond that happens, and there's this open communication that can happen. And in approaching the child with this openness, there's in a very short period of time, there's a level of trust that can happen between the volunteer and the child. And I think, Judd, you were mentioning earlier about the young boy who really was terrified of being at the camp, and how
his father was in jail. His mother didn't know where she was going to live from week to week, and so he didn't know where he was going to stay from week to week. He was traumatized for nothing of his own. He came to us, and he started out very enthusiastically, but he also didn't want to leave his mother. And so, as a team, we spent many nights working with this young boy to encourage him to take chances. So one night he stayed all night. The next night he decided he didn't want to stay all night, but that was okay with us. Yeah. It's not what we wanted, but it was okay with us, because that's where he was. We do a lot of things at Camp Burgess, which is this YMCA camp in Sandwich, which has ropes courses, and it has rock wall climbing and horseback riding, and the kids are all exposed to many, many new activities.
And this is Amazing Grace is there.
This is Amazing Grace is there. We are the support staff, and then the camp gives us a couple of senior counselors to help us work
with
through
the program,
things.
Yeah.
But we encourage the kids to do all these things, but if they only go up halfway up the rock wall, that's fine. If they really decide they don't want to do the high ropes, that's fine. One boy didn't want to get on a horseback. That's a big experience, a big horse. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And we said, would you just sit on the horse? He sat on that horse. And if you think about it, if you sit on a horse, that's a pretty powerful
Big thing,
experience
yeah.
it all
Yeah.
by itself. He got off and he was very proud of himself, and he got that feeling he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So we go back to Amazing Grace. We're not judging them by what they do or don't do, except that they have to live by certain rules.
Yeah.
Have to be respectful of each other and so forth. We're just trying to help them experience life in a different way. And they all leave like saying, oh my gosh, I didn't know all these things happened.
Now we're talking about a relatively short span of time,
5 days.
5 days.
Right.
That's a very short span of time to have a lot of positive vibes
It is.
happen and to bring about even a little change in a spirited 10-year-old. How do you use the time when it's so short to enable richness to happen?
It's not that we're trying to do richness, in my view. It's that we're trying to help them experience things. And after 5 days, since they come with nothing, they leave with this huge bag of wonderful experiences. That I've heard that if you talk to somebody who was at an Amazing Grace camp in Vermont or Maryland years later, they'll tell you this was a turning point in their life. 5 days. 5 days seems to be enough. If they've experienced unconditional love, then they can say, then I can be lovable and capable all by myself.
And I think the point where all the children in the group, they all come from the same condition where they have a parent incarcerated or had been incarcerated. So they have that commonality. And it's not that we talked about that out in the open, but there was this understanding that they didn't have to hold back from each other or try to explain or cover up their family history. So they were starting from a point where they could feel comfortable because they were all in the same situation.
Same kind of situation.
Yeah.
It must be, you did it 1 year. There is more places than the Cape Cod that has Amazing Grace. You mentioned other places, other states.
We're the only one in Massachusetts.
The only one in Massachusetts. Now, what do you call the success rate? That's probably a foolish question to ask, but what do you look at success, and what is success in the other states that have done something like this?
It's a fairly new concept. It's been the Reverend Jackie Means from the Episcopal Church in Maryland founded the first camp for children of the incarcerated. And then she's helped other states and areas develop the camp as well. So it's nationwide now, but it's only been going on for 20 years here and there. And so at this point, there isn't really a body of research that's been done, but a lot of it is anecdotal. We have a woman in our group who worked in the camp in Maryland, and she mentored this young boy at that camp, and now he's a young man in college now, and he works at the camp as a counselor now. So there are stories like that where there's been a profound impact on the lives of people. So, we would love to have at some point some scientific research done, but we're not at the point where we can do that. And when you're working with a population of children, it's also very difficult to try to do that.
But what I think must be difficult for the counselors too, when you, in that short span of 5 days, you develop a relationship, a very friendship with this young child, and the breaking off of that relationship after 5 days must be hurtful to some extent, or do they keep connections, like write notes? Is that part of the program?
We celebrate their birthdays and
They do.
holidays, and we send them cards. And
Beautiful.
so
And we have a reunion coming up in April where there'll be volunteers and children and their parents together. So the goal is that throughout the year we'll stay connected, and the kids will stay connected to each other.
How do you become part of the class, or how do you get into the program? How does a child get identified as that child has a mother in prison, so let's invite them?
we approach many different community resources who have connections to people who are in jail.
Yeah.
The Department of Children and Family, for example, or the Department of Probation, churches, anybody that we think might know of families who have a member in jail. Then we talk to them about it. If they're interested, we give them a brochure with an application, fairly extensive application. And then they have to work with their parent, the one who's not incarcerated,
Yeah.
to fill all this information out. We have to double check it to make sure it's okay. And then we had 13 last year, and we're hoping to have 20, or 12 last year. We had 24 this year. We
How many
hope.
applications did you have last year? 12?
No, oh my God, we probably had about 40
40?
applications.
Wow.
But there was a follow-through of 12 people. So this year we're thinking to get 24, 25 kids, we're going to have to get about 80 applications. So Ross Anderson heads the camper recruitment committee, and he actually also goes into Barnstable County House of Correction, where he does other programs, so the men and women in that jail know him. And so he talks about the program there. He's going to Plymouth, to Bristol County House of Correction. So we get the word out to the parent who's incarcerated, as well as using DCF and other sources to let the parent who is in the community know about the program. So it's a big effort to try to get the word out about the camp and get kids involved.
Have you seen the enthusiasm from assuming that one parent is in prison and the other parent is not, the parent that is taking care of the child, not in prison? Are most parents enthusiastic about this, or are they hesitant, or are they doubtful? What's the other parent feeling?
Yeah.
I think that this past year, our first year, they were hesitant and doubtful.
Yeah.
And we couldn't tell them from what our history was because we didn't have any. But once they came and they took the leap of faith to turn their child over to us, and then came back after 5 days, they could see the difference, and you could see their confidence. And so now we have a history that we can explain to other families.
Yeah. And we let parents have, we have a cell phone number that the parents could call. They could check in, how's their child doing, so they weren't totally removed from their child. So you know, that I think helped to ease their concerns, and also the reputation of Camp Burgess and their wonderful staff.
We should say that again. It's at Camp Burgess
it's
here
at Camp Burgess
in Sandwich.
Yes.
It's a
That
YMCA
hosts it,
camp.
YMCA camp. That's the connection there. The work of the YMCA is very much a part of this Amazing Grace.
Yes,
Absolutely, we
it's
couldn't do it without them.
Have to affirm that too. That's exciting. And but now I'm caught up on one of the things you had said before about this one child that came for one day and was willing to stay, but wasn't willing to stay the next day. What's the commitment when a parent comes with his child or her child and says they're going to sign up for Amazing Grace for these next 5 days? Then they go home, leave their child there.
They make a
Do they
commitment.
come back every day?
No, they
No.
make a commitment to stay the 5 days. They drop them off on Sunday and pick them up on Friday. But in this particular case, this young boy was really struggling to trust us. He was afraid of being away from his mother. It was a tragic story about police involvement with the family, so the boy was really quite scared. And we worked, Ross specifically worked with him for hours, well into the early morning hours.
How old was this child?
He was 10, 9 or 10,
years,
9 or 10.
years old.
And Ross got him to commit to that, to finish that night. And then we encouraged him, he committed to stay the next night, but then he got nervous. He'd sort of gone. So we could have had a rule that says if you leave, you're out.
But you didn't.
But we didn't, because we believed that this was important to the boy.
And the thing too was that the boy came back during the day.
He did.
And participated in the daytime activities. So once he had that freedom to come for the day, he was much more engaged with the other children, and much more.
There's
at
another
ease.
part of this, and that is that we're trying to get some of that first 12 to come back
For a second year, or
Yes.
for a second year. So you think about the alumnus, if you
Yeah.
will, can say to the new boy, "Oh, that's okay. Don't be worried about that." That, you know. So now you have a different level of commitment and community
trust, yes, in the system. Very, very exciting. Do the children, have you had many people saying they'd like to come back? One of the kids that were there last year, has there been a word spoken that maybe I'll be back next year?
Yeah, there's one particular volunteer who's been very engaged with the children, and there is interest in some of them coming back. The ones who last year were 11 years old, they may or may not return.
It's 7 to 11.
It's 7 to 11. So the goal is that once a child ages out, that we can give them a scholarship to attend the regular Camp Burgess.
Oh, great!
So that's the goal. So they'll continue having support, but it'll be in a broader sense.
How was it decided to go from 7 to 11? Where'd those figures come from?
It really was based on the other camps' experiences, that under 7 was too young, and then having it up to 11 is at the point where they haven't yet gotten really involved in a lot of troublesome activities. So this age range is a great time to help prevent that from happening, to give them a different experience.
And 7 to 11, as a parent, that age group can do things together.
Yes.
They're not like 7 and 18.
They're not
Right.
It doesn't work.
Right.
Or even 7, or even 11 and 13. They're not competing.
Yeah.
So very.
We saw a couple of kids sort of shepherding other kids,
Yeah.
because one was 2 or 11 and 2 or 7, and I mean there's a lot of wonderful stuff that goes on that we don't even orchestrate.
Aren't even aware of. Yeah. And how do you train to be participant or leadership there? What do you call it? Counselors.
So the volunteers that we had, they all had to go through a training called Safe Church and Safe Camp, which is a module program that the Episcopal Church has created. We also had a social worker come in to talk about the different struggles that families go through, and we also had a grown child of parents who had been incarcerated talk about her experiences. So we used a multiplicity of methods to help counselors know how to interact with the children, how to keep the children safe, and also to better understand some of the psychology that might be going on with the children.
I would imagine it must be quite a growing experience, not just for the child 7 to 11, but for the counselors.
Yes.
Because I think you learn so much by being in a position of service like that is invaluable, and as you look at what you're doing with your life. Any other positive ramifications of Amazing Grace that you are aware of, that you hope to be part of this next year? The dates again for the next year. We've got to say the dates.
The dates, Sunday, August 23rd through Friday, August 28th. August 23rd through the 28th. And what we're hoping is that as time goes on successively, that the children who go through this program will come back as counselors in training, so that they can learn real leadership skills themselves, and in doing so help other children, but also helping themselves in their own growth and development.
Beautiful. And the theme about unconditional love is the when you first gave me the information for this program, I was aware of it from last year, but that really jumped out at me. Unconditional love, and what a challenge it is to be participant in that kind of a growing experience for young children who are in such need for that, and knowing that they are lovable, lovable. And well, God bless you in your efforts. It sounds very exciting, and I hope that maybe through this television experience, there'll be more people be aware of what's going on August 23rd through August 28th this year, 2015, at Camp Burgess in Sandwich. The
And it's
Amazing Grace, and it's free. And it's free. The cost, there's no cost to the family at all.
And that
it is
counts
completely
food
free.
and-
Food and everything. That's a very important point to make. It doesn't cost the family, the child, anything,
Yeah.
except the giving of their time. Love. I just wanted to conclude with a couple of thoughts about just that love, and I'm going to Scripture for this. In 1 Corinthians, love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous, it does not brag, it is not proud, love is not rude, it is not selfish, it does not get upset with others. Love does not count up wrongs that have been done. Love is not happy with evil, but is happy with the truth. Love patiently accepts all things. It always trusts, always hopes, and always remains strong. Love. And Jesus said in John's Gospel, I give you a new commandment, love each other. You must love each other just as I have loved you. All people will know that you are my followers if you love each other. May the amazing grace and the amazing love of Amazing Grace go on unconditionally as people grow and look at futures with great, great hope. Thank you for being with us today. We look forward to talking with you again on Good Faith. Peace to you.